Welcome to the Growth Mindset, the podcast dedicated to exploring the architecture of our own potential. In our mission to understand personal and professional development, we often look at strategies, habits, and external factors. But what if the most powerful lever for change is a simple, internal belief? What if the way you view your own intelligence and talent is the primary predictor of your success?
That's the central question we're diving into today. It's a concept that underpins everything else we'll discuss in this series. We're starting with the very foundation, the core definitions of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. We'll explore what these beliefs are, where they come from, and the profound developmental implications they have on virtually every aspect of our lives, from the classroom to the boardroom. Understanding this distinction is the first and most critical step in unlocking the capacity for lifelong learning and resilience.
Exactly. So let's begin by dissecting the first of these two powerful belief systems, the fixed mindset. At its core, the fixed mindset is the belief that your qualities are carved in stone. It assumes that your character, intelligence, and creative abilities are static traits that you can't change in any meaningful way. People operating from this perspective feel an urgent need to prove themselves over and over, to show that they have a healthy dose of these fixed traits.
And this creates a very specific internal monologue. The world becomes a series of tests. Every situation calls for a confirmation of their intelligence, their personality, their character. They see a challenge and think, will this make me look smart or dumb? They see a setback and interpret it as a definitive statement about their capabilities. The underlying fear is about protecting their self-image and maintaining the appearance of competence. It's a fundamentally defensive posture.
That defensiveness is key. If you believe your intelligence is a finite quantity, any situation that stretches your abilities becomes a threat. It might expose your limits, and in the world of a fixed mindset, exposing a limit is tantamount to failure. This leads to a powerful drive to avoid challenges. Why risk failing when you can stick to what you already know you can do well? It's about preserving the label of being smart or talented.
Now, let's contrast that with its counterpart. The growth mindset is the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts. It's the understanding that abilities and intelligence can be developed through dedication, learning, and persistence. It doesn't mean you believe anyone can become Einstein, but it does mean you believe everyone can get smarter and better at things if they work at it.
The motivational focus here is completely different. Instead of a drive for validation, there's a drive for improvement and learning. Those with a growth mindset thrive on challenge. They see failure not as evidence of unintelligence, but a crucial part of the learning process, a springboard for growth. It's about stretching existing abilities and understanding that struggle is not a sign of weakness, but a necessary step toward mastery.
I like to think of it as two different approaches to playing a video game. The player with a fixed mindset finds a level they are good at and plays it over and over. They get the high score, they feel competent, and they prove their skill repeatedly. They avoid the more difficult levels because they might fail, which would tarnish their high score reputation. Their goal is to look like a great player.
Whereas the growth mindset player actively seeks out the harder levels. They know they will likely fail at first, maybe many times, but they also know that each failure provides information. They learn the patterns, they develop new strategies, and through that struggle, they acquire new skills. Their score might dip temporarily, but their actual ability, their capacity to handle more complex challenges, grows immensely. They are not focused on looking good, they are focused on getting good.
That's a perfect analogy. It highlights how the growth mindset creates a powerful passion for learning. It reframes the meaning of effort and difficulty. For the fixed mindset, having to try hard is a sign of deficiency. If you were truly smart, it would come naturally. But for the growth mindset, effort is what activates your ability. It's the key that unlocks development.
And this isn't just a feel-good theory. It has profound and measurable developmental implications. Research consistently shows that individuals who hold a growth mindset are more likely to thrive in the face of difficulty. Studies by Carol Dweck and others have found that students with a growth mindset consistently outperform those with a fixed mindset, especially when facing academic challenges.
This happens because the mindset itself drives the behaviors that lead to learning. A student with a growth mindset who gets a bad grade on a math test is more likely to think, I need to try a different study strategy, or I should ask the teacher for help. They see the bad grade as feedback on their current process. A student with a fixed mindset is more likely to conclude, I'm just not a math person. They see the grade as a final verdict on their ability, which can lead them to withdraw from the subject entirely.
This effect isn't limited to education. In the workplace, an employee with a fixed mindset might hide a mistake for fear of being judged incompetent. They might resist feedback because it feels like a personal attack. They avoid stretch assignments because the risk of failure and being seen as incapable is too high. This creates a cycle of stagnation.
Conversely, an employee with a growth mindset sees a mistake as a learning opportunity. They actively seek out constructive criticism because they know it's essential for improvement. They volunteer for challenging projects precisely because they know those projects will force them to develop new skills. Their career trajectory is one of continuous improvement, driven by the belief that their capabilities are not fixed but malleable.
So we can see how this single foundational belief, are my abilities fixed or can they be developed, cascades into a whole host of behaviors and outcomes. It shapes your relationship with challenge, your definition of success, and your response to failure. The person with a fixed mindset is on a lifelong quest to validate their inherent worth,
While the person with a growth mindset is on a lifelong journey of development. This distinction is the bedrock of personal growth. Understanding where you fall on this spectrum and knowing that you can consciously cultivate a growth mindset is the first step toward building a more resilient and successful life, both personally and professionally.
Which brings us to a crucial point. These mindsets are not binary, all or nothing labels. We can all have a mix of both, perhaps holding a growth mindset in one area of our lives and a more fixed one in another. The key is awareness.
Exactly. Recognizing our fixed mindset triggers is the beginning of change, and that's a perfect transition to where we're headed next time. Now that we have a solid grasp on the core definitions of these two mindsets, we can start to explore their real-world impact in more detail. In our next episode, we'll delve into how each mindset shapes our response to the inevitable challenges, obstacles, and failures we all encounter. We'll look at why one mindset sees a setback as a dead end, while the other sees it as a detour on the path to growth.
Welcome to the Growth Mindset, where we explore the architecture of human potential. In our last discussion, we laid the foundational principle, the core belief you hold about your own intelligence and abilities, whether they are static and unchangeable or malleable and open to development, creates the very psychological world you inhabit. But a foundation is only as strong as its ability to withstand pressure.
Exactly. It's one thing to understand a belief in theory, but its true power, its true nature, is revealed only when it's tested. And life, whether in our personal endeavors or professional careers, is a constant series of tests. So the question that naturally follows is, what happens when these two psychological worlds collide with adversity? What happens when the path forward is no longer smooth?
That is precisely our focus for today. We're moving from the what to the how these mindsets manifest under stress. We'll be doing a deep dive into 3 critical areas: the initial response to a challenge, the behavior exhibited when facing obstacles, and finally, the profound and often life-altering interpretation of failure. Understanding this is crucial because it's not our abilities, but our response to difficulty that ultimately charts the course of our development.
It really is the engine room of personal and professional growth. We left off establishing that individuals with a fixed mindset believe their talents are innate traits. So when a challenge appears on the horizon, it's not seen as an opportunity, it's perceived as a threat. The internal monologue isn't, here's a chance to learn something new, but rather, here's a chance to be exposed as a fraud.
The entire enterprise becomes about managing a reputation for competence rather than actually cultivating it. So they will naturally gravitate towards tasks they already know they can complete successfully. It's a form of self-preservation. In a professional context, this is the person who volunteers for the project they've done 10 times before, but shies away from the innovative, ambiguous, and potentially groundbreaking assignment.
Precisely. And if they can't avoid the challenge, the next phase is just as telling, their response to an obstacle. When the task proves difficult, the fixed mindset triggers an alarm. The thought process is, this is hard, which must mean I'm not smart enough to do it. Because if intelligence is fixed, then effort is a sign of deficiency. The truly gifted in this worldview don't have to try hard. As a result, they disengage and give up quickly, not out of laziness, but as a defense mechanism to protect their core self-concept of being smart.
This leads directly to the most critical juncture, the experience of failure. For the fixed mindset, failure is not an event, it's an identity. It's a verdict. When a project fails or a test is passed with a low grade, the interpretation is not, my strategy was ineffective, or I need to prepare differently next time. The interpretation is, I am a failure.
And that is a profoundly damaging conclusion. It becomes an indictment of their fixed innate ability. This creates a deep sense of shame, which is an incredibly paralyzing emotion. It's a feeling of being fundamentally flawed. The consequence is a powerful drive to withdraw from any similar challenge in the future, to avoid re-experiencing that shame. They learn to play it safe, to live within the narrow confines of what they've already mastered, and their world of opportunity begins to shrink.
Let's contrast that with the world of the growth mindset. When we start from the core belief that abilities can be cultivated, the entire equation of challenge and failure is inverted. A challenge is no longer a threat to your ego. It's the very mechanism of your development. The growth mindset actively seeks out challenges, understanding that stretching beyond one's current capabilities is the only way to expand them.
It's like a weightlifter going to the gym. They don't go to lift the weights they already find easy. That would be pointless. They go specifically to find the weight that is difficult, the one that causes struggle and strain, because they understand on a fundamental level that the struggle, the challenge, is what stimulates muscle growth. The growth mindset sees intellectual and professional challenges in precisely the same light. The struggle isn't a sign that you're deficient, it's the sign that you're getting stronger.
And that completely reframes the experience of hitting an obstacle. When a person with a growth mindset encounters a setback, their persistence actually increases. The obstacle isn't a stop sign, it's a puzzle. It's a source of information. The internal monologue shifts from, I can't do this, to, okay, that approach didn't work. What can I learn from this? What's another strategy I can try? The focus is entirely on the process, not on a premature judgment of their ability.
This allows them to treat failure not as a verdict, but as data, invaluable data. Think of a scientist running an experiment. If the experiment fails to produce the expected result, the scientist doesn't conclude, I am a terrible scientist, and quit the field. They say, interesting, my hypothesis was incorrect. This failure has given me new information that I can now use to formulate a better hypothesis. Failure is feedback. It illuminates the path forward by showing you where the dead ends are.
This distinction has massive developmental implications. The fixed mindset's pattern of avoiding challenges is a recipe for stagnation. If you only ever do what you know you can do, you will never expand your skills. You prevent yourself from developing the very problem-solving capabilities and strategic thinking that are essential for tackling complex, real-world issues. You effectively place a ceiling on your own potential.
And you also stunt the development of emotional resilience. Resilience isn't something you're born with. It's forged in the crucible of overcoming difficulty. By consistently reframing setbacks as learning opportunities, the growth mindset allows you to decouple your self-worth from your immediate performance. You learn that a single failure doesn't define you, which makes it psychologically safer to take on bigger and more meaningful challenges in the future. This creates a powerful upward spiral. Seeking challenges builds resilience, and that increased resilience emboldens you to seek even greater challenges.
So what we're really describing are two fundamentally different relationships with the learning process itself. One sees difficulty as a threat to a static identity, leading to avoidance and fragility. The other sees difficulty as the very process of becoming, leading to engagement and resilience. The first leads to a brittle sense of self, easily shattered by setbacks. The second cultivates a robust, adaptable capability that grows stronger through adversity.
I think that's the perfect way to summarize it. The way we frame challenge and failure isn't just a minor personality quirk. It is a primary determinant of our long-term trajectory. It governs whether we plateau early or continue to grow and adapt throughout our lives.
Which brings us to a critical underlying component of this entire process. We've talked about the reaction to challenges, but what about the engine that drives us through them? I'm talking about the concept of effort itself. How is the very act of trying, of putting in the hard work, perceived by these two different mindsets?
That is the essential next piece of the puzzle. Is effort a sign of weakness, or is it the key that unlocks mastery? And how does that belief shape the strategies we use when we learn? That's where we'll be venturing in our next episode, exploring the profound differences in how each mindset approaches effort, process, and the very mechanics of learning.
Welcome to The Growth Mindset. In our last episode, we explored how the lens through which we view challenges and failures shapes our response to them. We talked about how a fixed mindset leads to avoiding difficulty to protect one's self-image, while a growth mindset embraces challenges as the very soil in which our abilities grow. Today, we're going to dig deeper into the engine of that growth. What happens after we decide to take on a challenge? It's not just about facing the obstacle, but how we face it.
Exactly. That brings us to the heart of today's conversation, the role of effort, the importance of focusing on the process, and the development of effective learning strategies. These are the mechanics of growth. We'll be dissecting a fascinating paradox: why some people believe that needing to try hard is a sign of weakness, a belief that can ultimately stifle their own development. We will also explore how others view effort as the very path to mastery, and how that belief unlocks continuous improvement. And finally, we'll look at the toolbox, the learning strategies that people with a growth mindset actively cultivate.
It's a critical distinction. In our last discussion, we established that a fixed mindset sees failure as a verdict on innate ability. This creates a powerful incentive to avoid any situation where failure is a possibility. But the implications of that mindset run even deeper, extending to the very act of trying. For someone with a fixed mindset, high effort is often seen as evidence of low ability. The logic, though flawed, is seductive. If you were truly intelligent or talented, success should be effortless.
It creates a debilitating internal conflict. Imagine a brilliant musician who avoids practicing difficult passages. It's not laziness. From their perspective, the struggle itself tarnishes the image of being a natural. This is the core of the paradox. The very behaviors essential for improvement, hard work, deliberate practice, seeking guidance, are avoided because they contradict the belief in innate talent. This avoidance becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. By sidestepping effort to preserve the illusion of genius, they prevent themselves from ever truly developing it.
That's a powerful point. The focus is entirely on the outcome as a reflection of fixed traits. This leads to a very limited and rigid approach to learning. If the first attempt doesn't work, the conclusion is often, "I can't do it," rather than, "This strategy isn't working." There's a tendency to stick to familiar methods, often revolving around simple memorization, rather than striving for a deeper conceptual understanding. It's about looking smart, not becoming smarter.
Let's use an analogy. Think of building a complex structure, like a bridge. The fixed mindset approach is like wanting the bridge to appear fully formed, perfect, and complete. The idea of scaffolding, of messy construction sites, of visible effort and trial and error feels like an admission of incompetence. The process is seen as an ugly necessity at best and a sign of poor design at worst. They want the finished product to be a testament to the architect's inherent genius, not the result of a long, arduous process of building.
And in contrast, the growth mindset sees the effort itself as the primary vehicle for developing abilities. Hard work and persistence are not signs of weakness. They are the admired and necessary components of achievement. Dr. Carol Dweck's research is foundational here, showing that people with a growth mindset believe intelligence and talents can be nurtured through learning and effort. They see effort as the path to mastery.
To extend the bridge analogy, the person with a growth mindset is the architect who is fascinated by the process of construction. They love seeing the scaffolding go up, they analyze the stress points, they test different materials, and they view every setback as crucial data that will make the final structure stronger. They aren't just focused on the ribbon-cutting ceremony, they are deeply engaged in the engineering, the problem-solving, and the day-to-day work of bringing the vision to life. The process isn't something to be hidden, it's the most valuable part of the project. They value the how, not just the what.
This orientation towards process has profound implications for learning strategies. Because individuals with a growth mindset are not afraid of the struggle, they are more willing to experiment. If one approach doesn't yield results, they don't see it as a personal failure. Instead, they see it as an indication that they need to try a different strategy. They actively seek out new techniques, they ask for help, and they view the development of their learning strategies as a skill in itself. This creates a much more flexible and adaptive approach to acquiring new knowledge and skills.
Precisely. They are more likely to engage in what's known as deliberate practice, which involves zeroing in on weaknesses and tackling them aggressively. It's not just about putting in hours, it's about putting in focused, strategic hours. Someone learning a new language, for instance, won't just passively listen to audio lessons. They will actively practice conversation, seek feedback on their financian, drill verb conjugations, and find new, more effective ways to memorize vocabulary. They understand that the effort has to be intelligent and targeted to be truly effective. It's about being willing to step out of your comfort zone, knowing that's where growth happens.
And this brings us to the long-term developmental implications, which are quite stark. When effort is devalued and strategies remain rigid, as they do in a fixed mindset, individuals are robbed of the opportunity to develop their capabilities. They hit a plateau, often far below their potential, because they are unwilling to engage in the very processes that would propel them forward. This can lead to what some researchers call low-effort syndrome, where the fear of failure leads to a preemptive withdrawal of effort.
The cumulative effect of this is massive. Over a career or even just a single complex project, the person who consistently values effort and refines their strategies will vastly outperform the person who relies on what they believe to be fixed talent. The growth-minded individual builds not just skills, but also resilience and a robust work ethic. They learn how to learn. The fixed-minded individual, meanwhile, may become increasingly fragile, their self-worth constantly on the line, and their skill set largely stagnant.
So the key takeaway here is twofold. First, it's about fundamentally reframing our relationship with effort. Instead of viewing it as a sign that we lack talent, we need to see it as the essential ingredient for cultivating talent. Effort is the forge in which ability is shaped and strengthened.
And second, it's about becoming a strategist in our own learning. It's not enough to simply work hard. We must also work smart. This means paying attention to what works and what doesn't, actively seeking out new approaches, and viewing the learning process itself as something we can continually improve. By focusing on the journey of improvement rather than just the destination of success, we unlock the door to our full potential.
This focus on process and strategy is a crucial piece of the puzzle. It transforms our approach to challenges and our interpretation of effort. But there's another set of external inputs that our mindset dramatically influences. What happens when we receive feedback or see others succeed? That will be the focus of our next episode, where we'll explore the fixed mindset's defensive posture towards criticism and the growth mindset's embrace of feedback as a gift for growth. Welcome to the growth mindset. In our last conversation, we explored how our perception of effort and our approach to learning strategies fundamentally shape our potential. We established that seeing effort as the very engine of achievement rather than a sign of weakness is crucial. But what happens when that engine is put to the test? What happens when it meets external forces like criticism or the undeniable success of others?
That's the core question for today. It's one thing to value your own hard work, but it's another entirely to navigate the complex, often emotionally charged landscape of feedback and peer achievement. Today, we're dissecting how a fixed mindset and a growth mindset process these external inputs. We'll explore why one sees criticism as a personal attack and the success of others as a threat, while the other views the exact same events as invaluable opportunities for growth and sources of inspiration.
And these are not minor distinctions. How an individual responds to feedback and navigates the success of their peers has profound developmental implications. It can be the very factor that separates stagnation from continuous improvement, impacting everything from skill acquisition and career trajectory to the quality of our relationships with mentors and colleagues. It builds directly on our last discussion, because effective strategies and diligent effort are often guided and refined by external input. Without the ability to properly integrate that input, effort can be misdirected and strategies can become obsolete.
Exactly. Let's start by dissecting the fixed mindset's reaction. When you believe your intelligence, your talent, and your abilities are static, unchangeable traits, then any piece of negative feedback isn't just a comment on your performance, it's perceived as a judgment on your fundamental worth. A critique of your report isn't about the report, it's an indictment of your intelligence. A suggestion to improve a technique isn't about the technique, it's a declaration that you lack the innate talent.
This immediately triggers a defensive posture. The brain's primary goal becomes self-preservation, not learning. Instead of absorbing the feedback to find the kernel of truth that could lead to improvement, the energy is spent on deflecting it. This can manifest as making excuses, blaming external factors, questioning the credibility of the person giving the feedback, or simply shutting down and avoiding the situation altogether. The feedback is a threat to the ego, and the ego must be protected at all costs.
It's like having a house of cards. Each card represents a belief in your own inherent ability. Constructive criticism, in this view, isn't a friendly suggestion to reposition a card for better stability. It's a gust of wind threatening to bring the whole fragile structure down. So you build walls around it. You don't listen to the person suggesting a change because you're too busy shielding the cards. The irony is that in the frantic effort to protect the existing structure, you prevent any possibility of making it stronger or more robust.
That's a powerful image. And this defensive wall doesn't just block feedback, it also isolates the individual. If colleagues, mentors, or managers learn that offering feedback results in a defensive or emotional reaction, they will eventually stop offering it. This creates a feedback desert, where the individual is starved of the very information they need to grow, all because their mindset has poisoned the well.
This extends very logically to how a fixed mindset processes the success of others. If you believe ability is a fixed, finite quantity, then success becomes a zero-sum game. There's only so much to go around. When a colleague gets a promotion or a competitor achieves a breakthrough, it's not seen as an independent event. It's interpreted as their success somehow diminishing your own. It reinforces a narrative of scarcity, triggering feelings of jealousy, envy, and deep-seated comparison.
The internal monologue becomes, their success proves my failure. Or, if they are so smart, what does that make me? It creates a constant draining sense of competition. Instead of collaborating or learning from those who are succeeding, the fixed mindset drives a wedge, fostering resentment. This not only harms personal morale and well-being, but is incredibly toxic to team dynamics and organizational culture. You can't build a collaborative environment if individuals view their teammates' wins as personal losses.
Now, let's contrast this with the growth mindset. If you fundamentally believe that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work, your entire perception of these external events shifts. Criticism is no longer a personal attack. It's data. It's valuable, essential information that illuminates the path to improvement, and a gift. The person providing feedback isn't a judge delivering a verdict, they're a guide pointing out a blind spot or a more efficient route.
The focus moves away from judgment and toward utility. The primary question is no longer, what does this say about me, but how can I use this? This mindset actively seeks feedback. It understands that you cannot see your own swing, so to speak. You need a coach, a mirror, a video recording, external input to identify the flaws in your technique. Individuals with a growth mindset will proactively ask questions like, what could I have done better? Or where do you see the biggest opportunity for improvement in this project?
To go back to the analogy, the growth mindset sees personal and professional development not as a fragile house of cards, but as a garden. Feedback is not a destructive wind, it's the rain and the fertilizer. Some of it might sting a little, like pulling weeds, but it's all part of the process of cultivating a healthier, more vibrant result. You understand that the garden is a dynamic, living thing that is always a work in progress, and external input is crucial for its health.
I like that. It also changes the dynamic with the person giving the feedback. They are no longer an adversary, but a partner in the growth process. This fosters much stronger, more trusting relationships with mentors, managers, and peers. It creates a virtuous cycle. Because you receive feedback well, people are more willing to give you high-quality, honest feedback, which in turn accelerates your development even further.
And this completely reframes the success of others. If abilities can be cultivated, then someone else's achievement isn't a threat, it's an inspiration. It's proof of concept. Their success demonstrates what is possible. It provides a roadmap, a case study, a model for learning. The growth mindset asks, how did they do that? What can I learn from their process, their strategies, their work ethic?
Instead of jealousy, it sparks curiosity. Instead of comparison, it fuels motivation. You can genuinely celebrate a colleague's success because it doesn't diminish your own potential. In fact, it expands your understanding of what can be achieved. This is the foundation of a truly collaborative and innovative environment. When people are inspired by, rather than threatened by the talent around them, they share information more freely, they support one another, and the entire team or organization rises together.
Think about it from a developmental perspective. An individual with a fixed mindset, by consistently deflecting feedback and resenting others' success, effectively cuts themselves off from the two most powerful external drivers of growth: expert guidance and inspirational examples. They are left in an echo chamber of their own existing abilities, with no clear path forward.
Precisely. And the individual with a growth mindset actively plugs into these drivers. They build a network of mentors who will give them honest feedback. They study the successes of others to deconstruct the strategies and habits that led to those outcomes. Over a career, the divergence between these two paths is not linear, it's exponential. The small daily choices to either deflect or absorb feedback, to either resent or learn from success, compound over time to create massively different outcomes.
So the key takeaway here is realizing that feedback and the success of others are neutral events. They are simply data points. It is the mindset we apply to them that assigns them meaning and determines their impact. A fixed mindset interprets this data as a judgment on our fixed worth, leading to defensive and self-limiting behaviors.
Whereas a growth mindset interprets that same data as valuable information for development, fostering curiosity, resilience, and collaboration. It's about consciously choosing to see criticism not as a threat, but a tool, and to see the achievements of others not as a benchmark against which we fall short, but as a beacon showing us what's possible to achieve. This choice is fundamental to unlocking continuous personal and professional development. And as we'll begin to explore in our next episode, this ability to choose our mindset is deeply connected to our understanding of the very organ doing the choosing, the brain itself.
That's right. We'll be diving into the science of neuroplasticity, the incredible evidence-based reality that our brains can and do change in response to experience. We'll connect that biological fact to how we set goals, showing that when we understand our brains can grow, we shift from setting goals to look smart to setting goals that actually make us smarter.
Welcome to the Growth Mindset, where we explore the architecture of our own potential. In our last discussion, we examined how we respond to the world around us, to criticism, to feedback, and to the success of others. But that begs a deeper question. What is happening inside our own minds that dictates those external reactions? What is the fundamental mechanism that separates a mindset that embraces challenges from one that avoids them?
That's the core of what we're exploring today. We're moving from the what of our reactions to the why of our beliefs. Today, we're going to delve into the very biology of our potential by discussing brain plasticity. And we'll see how our understanding of the brain's ability to change directly shapes the most powerful tool we have for progress, our goals. We'll unpack the difference between performance goals and learning goals and why that distinction is one of the most critical you can make in your personal and professional life.
Exactly. This isn't just a continuation of our last conversation, it's the foundation beneath it. If you've ever wondered why some people seem to shrink from feedback while others thrive on it, the answer often lies in their implicit belief about whether the brain is a finished product or a work in progress. It's a distinction that changes everything.
Let's start with that foundational concept, neuroplasticity. At its heart, it's the science that validates the entire principle of a growth mindset. Neuroplasticity is the brain's remarkable capacity to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. Think of your brain not as a static, pre-programmed computer, but as a dynamic, living network of pathways that physically changes in response to your experiences, thoughts, and actions. Every time you learn a new skill, practice an instrument, or even wrestle with a difficult idea, you are physically rewiring your brain.
And this is where the first major split between the two mindsets occurs. Someone with a fixed mindset operates, often unconsciously, under the assumption that their intelligence, their talents, and their abilities are innate and unchangeable. They live in a world where the brain's hardware is fixed. Therefore, they have little to no real belief in the brain's ability to develop through experience. Their focus isn't on growth because they don't truly believe growth is possible at a fundamental level.
Precisely. In contrast, an individual with a growth mindset has a strong, often explicit understanding of neuroplasticity. They know that the brain can and does form new connections, that existing pathways can be strengthened, and that new capabilities can be developed at any stage of life. This isn't just a motivational belief for them, it's a biological reality. They understand that effort isn't just about trying hard, it's the very process that drives the physical remodeling of the brain to become more capable.
This core belief system has a direct and profound impact on the way we set goals. If you believe your abilities are fixed, your entire motivation system is built around proving that you have a good set of those fixed abilities. This gives rise to what we call performance goals. The primary focus of a performance goal is to look smart, to avoid mistakes at all costs, and to demonstrate your existing talents. The goal isn't to learn, it's to be validated.
And you can see the danger in that. If your goal is to look smart, you will instinctively avoid any situation where you might look foolish. This means you'll gravitate towards tasks that are safe, tasks you already know you can succeed at. The fixed mindset leads to a life lived within a comfort zone, because venturing outside of it risks exposing a perceived permanent limitation. A student with this mindset might avoid an advanced math class not because they couldn't learn the material, but because the struggle to learn it might make them look less intelligent.
It's a self-imposed prison of competence. You become so focused on protecting the image of your ability that you sacrifice the opportunity to expand the ability itself.
Now, let's contrast that with the goals that emerge from a growth mindset. If you truly believe your brain can grow and change, if you understand neuroplasticity, then your focus shifts dramatically. You're no longer trying to prove what you are, you're trying to become what you could be. This is where learning goals come into play. With a learning goal, the objective is to develop a new skill, to understand a concept on a deep level, or to expand your capabilities through a challenge that is appropriately difficult.
The entire perspective on failure and effort flips. Under a performance goal framework, mistakes are a disaster. They are evidence of your fixed limitations. But under a learning goal framework, mistakes are simply data. They're valuable information about what you don't know yet and where you need to focus your efforts to forge those new neural pathways. Effort isn't a sign of weakness, it's the engine of growth.
I like to think of it like this. The fixed mindset views your ability as a marble statue. It might be beautiful and impressive, but it's finished. Any attempt to change it will only damage it. So your primary goal is to display the statue in the best possible light and protect it from any harm or criticism. You'd never take a chisel to it because you believe its form is permanent. The goals you set are all about building the perfect pedestal and lighting for that statue.
That's a powerful analogy.
The growth mindset, on the other hand, views your ability as a muscle. It has a current state of strength, but its potential is unknown. The only way to discover and increase its strength is to work it out. to apply resistance and push its limits. So you actively seek out heavy weights, not because it's easy, but because you know the struggle is what stimulates growth. The soreness, the difficulty, that's the feeling of the muscle fibers breaking down so they can rebuild stronger. Your goals aren't about showcasing the muscle as it is today. They're about going to the gym and putting in the work to make it stronger for tomorrow.
And the developmental implication here is monumental. When individuals believe their brains can grow and they set challenging learning goals, they actively engage in the very behaviors that promote that neural development. They seek out challenges, persist through setbacks, and solicit feedback, all of which are activities that drive the physical changes in the brain that we call learning. It creates a powerful upward spiral. The belief in neuroplasticity leads to actions that cause neuroplasticity, which in turn reinforces the belief.
Conversely, a fixed mindset and its associated performance goals creates a cycle of stagnation. By avoiding challenges and shunning feedback, you starve your brain of the very experiences it needs to grow. You end up not only failing to develop new skills, but also reinforcing the false belief that you were incapable of doing so in the first place. You essentially prove your own limiting belief to be true by never taking the actions that could disprove it.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy written at a neural level. So the key takeaway isn't just that it's better to have a growth mindset. It's that understanding the biological reality of brain plasticity is the key that unlocks the door to setting effective, learning-focused goals. And those goals are the roadmap to genuine, lifelong development. Your belief about what your brain is determines what it can become.
It all starts with that fundamental belief. And once that belief is in place, it begins to influence everything else. It shapes not just our goals, but our very internal monologue. How we talk to ourselves in moments of struggle, for instance, is a direct reflection of whether we believe we are a statue or a muscle.
That's a perfect place to look next. As we close out this discussion, think about how these different mindsets might sound. What are the words and phrases that reveal a belief in fixed traits versus a belief in growth? And how does that internal language impact our ability to bounce back from the inevitable difficulties of life? That's exactly what we'll be exploring in our next episode, the connection between mindset, our language patterns, and our resilience in the face of stress. Welcome to the Growth Mindset, where we explore the fascinating architecture of human potential. In our last discussion, we established a crucial foundation, the brain's incredible capacity for change, its neuroplasticity, and how setting learning-focused goals can physically alter its structure and function. We know our brains can change, but that leaves a more immediate, practical question. What happens in the moment of struggle? What is the trigger that either shuts down that potential or unlocks it?
It's a critical question. Having the potential for growth is one thing, but activating it when we're frustrated, when we fail, when we feel overwhelmed, that's another matter entirely. It turns out that one of the most powerful tools for activating that potential is something we use every single moment of every day, our language. Today, we're going to delve into the microscopic level of our own self-talk, examining how specific language patterns can either build walls or open doors in our minds. We'll also connect these internal dialogues to our ability to bounce back from adversity, our resilience, and even explore how our choice of words can shape our body's physiological response to stress.
Exactly. This isn't just about positive thinking. It's about the deep-seated connection between our words, our beliefs, and our biology. We'll see how the language of a fixed mindset reflects a belief in permanence and limitation, and how that can lead to heightened stress and avoidance. Then we'll contrast that with the language of a growth mindset, which emphasizes possibility and development, and see how that fosters adaptive emotional regulation and true resilience. It builds directly on our understanding of neuroplasticity, because the language we use is, in many ways, the set of instructions we give our brain for how to wire itself in response to experience.
Let's start with the fixed mindset. The language here is often absolute and definitive. It sounds like a final judgment. Phrases like, "I can't do this," are a full stop. There's no room for movement. Or the classic, "I'm just not a math person." When you say that, you're not describing a temporary difficulty. You're stating what you believe to be a permanent, unchangeable trait, a core part of your identity. It's like looking at a locked door and declaring it a wall. you've removed the possibility of finding a key.
That framing of identity versus process is so important. "I'm not a math person" is a statement of being. It suggests that your ability in this area is a fixed quantity that has been measured and found wanting. Another one is, "I'll never be good at this." The word never is incredibly powerful. It projects this perceived limitation across your entire future, effectively shutting down any motivation to engage in the very practice that could lead to improvement. Why would you try if you've already decided failure is an inevitability?
And this internal language has immediate, real-world consequences for our ability to cope with challenges. Think of it like a ship's captain navigating a storm. The fixed mindset captain sees the storm and says, "This ship wasn't built for these waves. We're going to sink." The immediate response is panic, a sense of hopelessness. The crew freezes, unsure what to do, because the leader has already declared defeat. In the brain, this translates to a higher stress response. When faced with a difficult task, someone locked in this mindset experiences a greater spike in cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone.
And that cortisol spike isn't just a feeling of being stressed, it has cognitive effects. It can impair prefrontal cortex functions like problem solving and rational thought. This is the biological underpinning of choking under pressure. Your internal monologue, "I can't do this, I'm going to fail," triggers a physiological state that actually makes failure more likely. This creates a devastating feedback loop. The fixed belief leads to language of failure, which triggers a stress response, which impairs performance, which then proves the original fixed belief was correct. "See, I told you I wasn't good at this."
This is where we see the tendency toward avoidance-based coping strategies. If you believe a challenge is a threat to your sense of self-worth and that your abilities are fixed, the most logical thing to do is to avoid the challenge altogether. Why put yourself in a situation that you believe will only lead to stress and confirm your inadequacies? This can manifest as procrastination, giving up easily, or refusing to even start a task that seems too difficult. Over time, this pattern of avoidance can lead to higher rates of anxiety and depression because the world is full of challenges, and a constant state of avoidance and threat detection is mentally and emotionally exhausting.
So let's flip the coin. How does the language of a growth mindset completely rewrite this entire sequence?
The change is subtle yet profound. The growth mindset reframes the exact same situations with language that emphasizes development, process, and possibility. Instead of "I can't do this," the phrase becomes "I can't do this yet." That one three-letter word, "yet," changes everything. It transforms a statement of permanent failure into a statement of a temporary state on a longer journey. It implies that with time, effort, and strategy, success is possible. The door that was once a wall now simply needs a key, and your job is to find it.
The identity statement also changes. Instead of the definitive "I'm not a math person," it becomes a description of a process. "I'm learning to be better at math," or "I find this challenging, so I'll need to use different strategies." This language separates your identity from your performance. A struggle with a concept doesn't mean you are a failure, it means your current strategy is failing. That's a much less threatening and much more solvable problem. The focus shifts from judging yourself to improving your approach.
Let's go back to our ship captain in the storm. The growth mindset captain sees the same massive waves and says, "This is a new kind of storm I haven't seen before. I'll need to figure out a new strategy to navigate these waves." The focus is immediately on action and learning. There's an underlying belief that the ship and the crew are capable of handling the situation, even if the solution isn't immediately obvious. This outlook completely changes the physiological response.
It does. Research suggests that individuals with a growth mindset, when faced with setbacks, exhibit more adaptive stress responses. They may still feel the pressure. Stress isn't a bad thing, it's a call to action, but their emotional regulation is better. They are more likely to see the challenge as an opportunity rather than a threat. This cognitive reappraisal helps to moderate the cortisol spike. Their bodies aren't going into full-on fight-or-flight mode because their brains are interpreting the situation not as a verdict on their capabilities, but as a puzzle to be solved. This allows them to stay engaged, access higher-order thinking, and persist through the difficulty.
This is the core of resilience. Resilience isn't about never falling down, it's about how you get back up.
The language of a fixed mindset tells you, you fell because you're a clumsy person. This makes getting up seem pointless. The language of a growth mindset says, you tripped on that route. Next time, you'll know to watch out for it. It makes the fall a learning experience, a piece of data that will inform future success. Setbacks are seen as temporary and changeable, not permanent indictments of your worth.
And this creates the opposite feedback loop from the one we discussed earlier, an upward spiral. A growth-oriented belief system leads to process-focused language, which leads to a more adaptive stress response. This allows for clear thinking and persistence, which increases the likelihood of eventually succeeding. That success then reinforces the underlying belief that effort and strategy lead to growth. This is the engine of learning and development. The language you use isn't just describing the reality of your skills, it's actively creating it by guiding your behavior and your biology.
I think of it like tuning a radio. The signal for success and learning is always being broadcast. A fixed mindset fills your head with so much static, I can't, I'm not, I'll never, that you can't hear the signal. The noise of your own self-judgment drowns out the information you need to learn from the mistake. A growth mindset, with its language of yet and how can I, is like clearing away that static. It allows you to tune into the signal, to hear the feedback the world is giving you, and to adjust your approach accordingly. It's about turning down the volume on judgment and turning up the volume on curiosity.
So the key takeaway here is incredibly direct and actionable. The words we say to ourselves are not just throwaway thoughts. They are the tools we use to construct our reality. The choice between saying, I failed, and this strategy failed, is the choice between a dead end and a new path. The choice between I'm a bad public speaker and I need more practice with my public speaking skills is the choice between a fixed identity and a dynamic process of growth.
Absolutely. Our internal monologue is a constant stream of instruction to our brain and body. By consciously choosing the language of process, of learning, and of possibility, by simply adding the word yet, we can fundamentally alter our response to challenges. We can build resilience not as a vague character trait, but as a direct result of our cognitive habits. This practice directly influences our stress responses, our persistence, and ultimately our capacity for lifelong learning.
This focus on our internal world, our self-talk, and our personal resilience is a critical piece of the puzzle. But of course, we don't develop in a vacuum. Our mindset profoundly affects how we interact with others and how their mindsets, in turn, affect us.
That's the perfect bridge to our next conversation. Now that we understand how to manage our internal response to challenges, we need to explore how these mindsets play out in our most important collaborations. In our next episode, we'll examine the impact of fixed and growth mindsets on our social relationships, from giving and receiving feedback to navigating difficulties as a team, and see how these interactions become the foundation for our long-term personal and professional development.
Welcome to the final installment of our deep dive. You're listening to The Growth Mindset.
In our last conversation, we explored the very language we use and how it wires our brains for resilience or for fragility. We saw how phrases like, I can't do this, versus I can't do this yet, can fundamentally alter our response to stress and challenge.
Exactly. And that distinction doesn't just live inside our own heads, it radiates outward, shaping the very fabric of our interactions and the trajectory of our lives. So, for our concluding discussion, we want to ask, what is the long-term forecast for someone with a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset?
It's the ultimate question of this entire series. We're moving beyond the internal experience to the external manifestation. Today, we'll examine how these mindsets impact our social relationships, our friendships, our partnerships, and our professional collaborations. And we'll connect that directly to long-term personal and professional development, looking at how these mindsets can either cap our potential or unlock a lifetime of continuous growth.
It's the culmination of everything we've discussed. We've laid the groundwork of brain plasticity, explored its effects on learning, and seen its connection to resilience. Now we see how it all plays out on the grand stage of a human life, affecting our connections with others and our ultimate career paths.
Let's start with the fixed mindset's effect on our social ecosystems. When an individual genuinely believes their intelligence, talents, and personality are static, unchangeable traits, any form of feedback or criticism isn't just a comment on their work, it's a judgment on their core identity.
It becomes deeply personal, an attack on who they are.
Precisely. And the natural human response to an attack is defensiveness. Imagine a team meeting where a project's shortcomings are being discussed. The person with a fixed mindset is less likely to hear constructive advice. Instead, they hear, "You failed," or "You are not smart enough." Their energy immediately goes into deflecting that perceived judgment. They might get angry, shut down, or start blaming external factors or other people.
This creates a toxic environment for collaboration. If one person cannot engage with feedback without making it a personal referendum, honest communication grinds to a halt. Team members start to walk on eggshells.
And it goes beyond just defensiveness. A fixed mindset often cultivates an environment of competition over collaboration. If you believe ability is a finite resource, that there's only so much intelligence or talent to go around, then the success of others can feel like a direct threat to your own status. In this worldview, your colleague's brilliant idea isn't a win for the team, it's a data point proving they are smarter than you, which, in the fixed mindset, diminishes your own value.
So, instead of building on each other's ideas, you might see individuals hoarding information, subtly undermining colleagues, or focusing more on looking smart than on achieving the collective goal.
Exactly. It replaces the synergy of a team with the zero-sum game of individual rivalry. And this extends to periods of difficulty. When challenges arise, the fixed mindset internalizes the struggle as proof of inadequacy. This can lead to withdrawal. Rather than reaching out for help, which would be an admission of a deficiency, the individual might isolate themselves, trying to solve the problem alone to avoid looking incompetent. This robs them of the support and diverse perspectives of their network.
This paints a clear picture of strained relationships. But how does this directly translate to a stagnation in professional development over the long term?
It creates a self-reinforcing cycle. If you consistently avoid challenges for fear of failure, you never leave your comfort zone. Your learning curve, which should be a dynamic, upward trajectory, flattens out and becomes a plateau. You master a specific set of skills and then simply stop growing because any new, difficult task represents an unacceptable risk of being exposed of lacking.
The very opportunities that would lead to growth are perceived as threats to be avoided.
Think of it like a tree that refuses to grow new branches. A healthy tree constantly pushes out new shoots, some of which will thrive and bear fruit, while others may wither. But the tree that fears producing a branch that might not flourish stops growing altogether. It may seem safe and stable for a while, but it's not truly alive or adapting. In a professional context, this is the person who turns down a promotion because it involves managing a team, which they've never done before. It's the expert in a dying technology who refuses to learn the new industry standard.
Their unwillingness to take risks or appear to be a novice again, even temporarily, becomes the ceiling on their career. They become a big fish in an ever-shrinking pond.
That's the perfect analogy. The pond shrinks because the world keeps changing. New technologies, new methodologies, new economic realities, they all demand adaptation. The fixed mindset creates a rigid structure that is incredibly vulnerable to these shifts. The career stagnates not because of a lack of initial talent, but because of an unwillingness to engage in the continuous process of skill development that modern careers demand.
So let's flip the coin. How does the growth mindset fundamentally rewire this entire dynamic, both socially and professionally?
It starts from the same place, feedback. For the person with the growth mindset, feedback isn't a judgment of their core identity, it's valuable data. It's a roadmap showing them the path to improvement. They understand that abilities are malleable, so a critique of their work isn't an indictment of their worth. It's a gift of information that helps them grow.
This immediately changes the social dynamic. Instead of defensiveness, you get curiosity. Instead of blame, you get engagement.
Absolutely. In that same team meeting, the individual with a growth mindset hears the critique and thinks, "This is fantastic. I missed that. Tell me more." They actively solicit feedback because they crave the data that will make them better. This fosters an environment of psychological safety where everyone feels empowered to speak honestly and constructively. It transforms a group of individuals into a true learning organization.
And the competitive zero-sum game is replaced with what?
It's replaced with collaborative problem solving and mutual support. When you believe everyone can grow, a colleague's success is not a threat. It's an inspiration. It's an opportunity to learn. You celebrate their wins, you ask them how they did it, and you collaborate to lift the entire team. During difficult periods, this mindset encourages reaching out. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a smart strategy for growth. It's leveraging the collective intelligence of the group. This builds incredibly resilient and supportive networks.
This sounds like the foundation for continuous, lifelong learning. It's not a phase you go through in school, it's an operational node for life.
That is the crucial point. With a growth mindset, learning never stops. Challenges are not threats. They are the main engine of development. This individual actively seeks out difficult assignments. They volunteer for projects that will stretch their capabilities. They see a new technology not as a burden to learn, but as an exciting new tool to master. Their career isn't a ladder to be climbed, but a landscape to be explored.
So their career advancement isn't just about promotions. It's about the continual expansion of their skills, their knowledge, and their value. They aren't just adapting to change, they are often driving it because they are constantly at the forefront of learning.
Precisely. This creates a powerful upward spiral. Strong, supportive relationships provide the emotional resilience to take on bigger risks. Taking on those risks and challenges leads to accelerated skill development. That development opens up new opportunities for advancement, and that advancement introduces them to new, complex challenges, starting the virtuous cycle all over again.
When we pull back and look at the entire developmental arc, the implications are profound. It's not just about feeling better about yourself or being more resilient in the moment, it's about building a life.
It really is. The quality of our relationships dictates the quality of our learning opportunities and our emotional support systems. And in a world that is changing at an exponential rate, the ability to learn and adapt is the single most important factor for long-term success.
So the fixed mindset, by creating brittle relationships and a fear of challenges, essentially locks a person into a developmental path that becomes increasingly misaligned with the demands of the real world.
It does. It fosters fragility in a world that demands adaptability. Conversely, the growth mindset does the opposite. It builds a supportive, collaborative network that acts as a safety net for taking intelligent risks. It cultivates an innate drive to learn and adapt. Over a lifetime, these two paths don't just diverge slightly, they lead to completely different destinations. One leads to stagnation and obsolescence, the other to sustained personal and professional fulfillment.
As we conclude this series, this feels like the ultimate takeaway. The mindset you adopt is the single most powerful tool you have for shaping your future, from the quality of your closest relationships to the arc of your entire career. It dictates whether you build walls or bridges, whether you see a ceiling or an open sky.
And the most empowering part of this entire discussion is that this choice is always available to us. It's not a trait we are born with. It is a perspective we can cultivate, a mindset we can choose to grow. Thank you for joining us on this journey.